Ferrari arrived at the Bahrain Grand Prix with one of the most ambitious updates on the entire grid so far this year. And it wasn't a simple cosmetic tweak or minor improvement. What they brought to the track was a profound structural transformation in the most critical area of the SF-25, the floor. This area, often overlooked by fans, is the key to performance in modern Formula One. Starting in 2022 with the return of ground effect, the floor design can make the difference between a winning team and a car struggling to make it into the top 10. And Ferrari knew this. That's why they redesigned not just a portion, but almost the entire floor structure of the car. The modification began with the leading edge, incorporating new vertical fins that aim to control airflow before it reaches the underbody of the car. Precise management of this area is essential to avoid unwanted turbulence and properly fuel ground effect. The team then completely redesigned the central body of the floor, adjusting the leading edge to allow for cleaner airflow beneath the car. But the engineers focused most attention on the outer edge of the floor and the rear diffuser. This is where Ferrari played an aggressive card. The redesign of these areas not only seeks to improve downforce but also eliminate the familiar rebound peaks that have plagued single-seaters in the modern ground effect era. The key is to redistribute the pressures generated beneath the car, to prevent airflow from being interrupted or dissipated inefficiently. In addition, a new air channel was introduced next to the rear wing center support, designed to improve thermal efficiency and redirect hot air to less sensitive areas of the car. This not only helps with more intelligent cooling but also optimizes the so-called downwash effect, increasing the car's stability at high speeds. This entire package was not created specifically with the Bahrain circuit in mind. It's a fundamental solution, a strategic response to the SF-25 structural problems that had been dragging on since the beginning of the season. The goal wasn't simply to improve lap times in a single Grand Prix, but to increase the car's consistency across different types of tracks. This redesign aims directly to shift the center of aerodynamic pressure toward the car's center of mass. In other words, to make the car handle more balanced without imbalances between the front and rear that could generate understeer, oversteer, or aerodynamic bounce. What Ferrari did in Bahrain is, without exaggeration, a re-engineering of its aerodynamic approach. But one question still remained: did it work? When Ferrari took the SF-25 onto track with its new floor pan in Bahrain, all eyes were on its performance. Expectations were high, especially since this update had been developed in such haste that its implementation had to be brought forward. It was originally intended for Miami, but urgency forced it to be tested earlier. Was it worth it? From the first free practice session, the signals were mixed. The car proved more stable, more predictable, and above all, with a greater ability to operate in different conditions. What Ferrari calls its operating window expanded almost double that observed in Suzuka just a week earlier. That figure alone represents progress. In Formula One, the possibility of having a car that performs well in a wider range of temperatures, fuel loads, or track conditions is pure gold. But this is where the analysis becomes complex. Charles Leclerc finished in 4th place. Exactly the same result as in Japan. There was no improvement in the final position, but there was in the way it was achieved. During the second stint on medium tires, the Ferrari showed strong, solid pace, even superior to the McLarens in certain sections. But that advantage disappeared completely when the car stopped benefiting from the compound. As soon as the medium tires degraded and the race forced the use of soft tires, Ferrari was vulnerable again. George Russell and the McLarens not only maintained their pace, but also finished without any real threat from Leclerc. In other words, the new tread helped, but it wasn't a transformative change. It was an evolution, not a revolution. It's important to keep in mind that Ferrari still struggles with tire degradation, and although stability has improved, the car is still not the most competitive in the traction phase or in high-speed corners. The irregular behavior of the rear axle is still evident, especially on corner exits where the SF-25 tends to lose grip more easily than its rivals. Furthermore, the driver's statements were a clear reflection of this duality. Charles Leclerc summed it up unfiltered: the car is more consistent, but not faster. Lewis Hamilton, for his part, acknowledged that the improvements were working, but his frustration was also evident during qualifying, where he was unable to extract the maximum from the car. Even from the pit wall, Fred Vasseur tried to temper expectations. He didn't speak of major advances, but rather small improvements. Tenths, not seconds. Step by step. A clear message that this update wasn't going to change the team's destiny immediately. In short, Ferrari's new floor didn't fail, but it didn't meet the most optimistic projections either. It increased stability, widened the performance window, and provided a more solid technical foundation for future work. but the gap with Red Bull and McLaren remains. And while there has been progress, there's still no reason to celebrate, only to keep working. The big question now is whether these improvements will have a more noticeable impact on a circuit like Jeddah, whose characteristics could amplify the benefits of the redesign. Because if Bahrain wasn't the ideal setting, is Saudi Arabia? Technical updates can be measured in data, simulations, or telemetry graphs. But there is one source of information that, although subjective, reveals fundamental aspects that numbers can't: what the drivers feel. Charles Leclerc was one of the first to speak after the implementation of the new floor in Bahrain. His message was clear, direct, and unvarnished. He said the car is now more predictable, more consistent lap after lap. It no longer behaves erratically from corner to corner as it did in Japan or Australia. That consistency for a driver who builds his pace based on confidence in the rear axle is vital. However, Leclerc also made a statement that set the tone for the entire evaluation. He said the car has more stability, but the potential remains the same. And he went further. He asserted that McLaren is on another planet. Those words, spoken without euphoria or drama, reflect the team's internal awareness. Progress has been made, but the gap to the leaders remains wide. And it's not small. Lewis Hamilton, meanwhile, had a more complicated weekend. The Briton, who arrived at Ferrari hoping to begin a competitive phase from the start, found himself with a car that still doesn't offer the balance he needs. During qualifying in Bahrain, his body language inside and outside the car reflected frustration, especially when the car was unpredictable under braking or tended to suddenly lose traction when exiting corners. Despite this, Hamilton didn't criticize the team. On the contrary, he acknowledged that the improvements were working, that steps were being taken. But his message was calculated, step by step. He didn't promise immediate results, nor did he speak of a technical revolution. He showed experience, moderation, and commitment to the project. Although he also made it clear that the car still doesn't allow him to compete at the level he demands. Team principal Fred Vasseur also intervened to calm the situation. He spoke of tenths of a second, not miracles. He emphasized that even the smallest gain can be key in such a tight championship. His approach was methodical, acknowledging that progress is being made without selling a triumphalist narrative. These three voices, different in style but aligned in substance, draw a common thread. The technical update has improved key aspects of the SF-25's performance, especially stability and consistency. But it has not yet unlocked the potential needed to compete with the best. And that reveals something deeper. At Ferrari, it's no longer about immediate solutions. It's about rebuilding from the ground up. Designing a competitive car not for a single race, but for an entire season. Leclerc knows this. Hamilton knows this. Vasseur knows this. That's why the words aren't of euphoria, but of patience. Of long-term conviction. The new track surface was a step forward. But the drivers have made it clear. The real challenge still lies ahead. After the debut of the new track surface in Bahrain, all eyes now turn to the next circuit on the calendar. Jeddah Corniche, Saudi Arabia. And it's no ordinary race. The world's fastest street circuit represents a radically different environment than Sakhir. And for Ferrari, it could be exactly what they need. Jeddah is a circuit with an extremely smooth surface, few bumps, and less aerodynamic demands compared to other tracks. This allows teams to operate their cars with lower ground clearance without compromising mechanical wear. For Ferrari, this is key. The SF-25 has suffered from the height dilemma since the start of the season. To generate efficient downforce, the car needs to ride close to the ground. But doing so increases wear on the sliding block, as seen in China, where Lewis Hamilton was disqualified for this reason. This forced the team to raise the car more than ideally, losing performance. In Jeddah, that limitation could disappear. The team has the possibility of lowering the car to the range where the new floor was designed to work optimally. According to internal simulations, this would extend the SF-25's operating window by an additional 30% compared to the already improved window in Bahrain. That number is no small feat. It means greater consistency, greater aerodynamic efficiency, and a greater ability to attack in qualifying and maintain pace in the race. Furthermore, the compounds selected by Pirelli for this event are the softest available, C3, C4, and C5. And with the expected low level of degradation, Ferrari will be able to maximize its runs without the constant fear of overheating or a sudden drop in rear tire performance, one of its weak points this season. But there is another aspect that could play in the Scuderia's favor. The layout of the Jeddah circuit, with its long high-speed corners, demands a very precise aerodynamic balance between the front and rear axles. With the new floor design and its ability to redistribute the center of pressure, Ferrari could achieve the balance it has struggled to find. Especially if the new low downforce configuration the team tested in the simulator for this event is maintained, seeking to maximize ground effect without relying so heavily on the rear wing. At Maranello they know this. The conditions are ripe for Jeddah to be the first major test of the updated SF-25's true potential. In the simulators, the car proved more responsive, with greater mechanical traction on corner exits and without the abrupt loss of support in fast areas, as was the case in Japan and Australia. Therefore, beyond the raw results in Bahrain, the team is setting its sights on Saudi Arabia as the true validation laboratory. If the numbers are confirmed on the track, it could be the stage where Ferrari finally demonstrates not only consistency but also pure speed. The kind that, until now, has been the exclusive domain of Red Bull and McLaren. But if that doesn't happen, if they can't even get close to the podium in Jeddah, the message will be different. No matter how many improvements come later, if the SF-25 doesn't perform in the conditions for which it was designed, Ferrari will have to rethink the concept from the ground up. Jeddah won't just be a race. It will be a technical verdict. Ferrari has taken a step. A necessary one, a brave one, but also one that's not enough to erase the doubts. The SF-25's new floor isn't a leap toward victory, but rather a more solid foundation for building something better. In Bahrain it was clear that there is progress. But it was also clear that this progress isn't enough if the goal is to compete against Red Bull, McLaren, or even Mercedes on equal terms. The improvement in the operating window is real. So is the car's stability. But the lap time remains stagnant. And the gap to the leaders remains intact. Leclerc and Hamilton know it. They feel it in every corner, at every track exit, in every moment when they lack the grip that makes the difference between glory and oblivion. The Scuderia has opted for its own development. A path without copying its rivals. Without adapting other concepts. This technical independence can be its greatest strength or its greatest weakness. It all depends on whether the decisions that seem coherent today translate into pure speed tomorrow. Jeddah is the next stop. A circuit that, at least on paper, should be favorable. A track where the new layout can finally shine without height restrictions, without penalties for block wear, without aerodynamic limitations that curb its true potential. If Ferrari achieves its first podium of the season there, it won't just be a result. It will be a symptom. That there is direction, that there is technical coherence, that the work in Maranello is beginning to bear fruit. But if even in that ideal scenario they fail to excel, the signal will be different. A starker one. One that can't be disguised with talk of patience or long-term promises. What Ferrari is doing in 2025 isn't simply fighting for points. It's rewriting the foundation on which it will build the coming years. Every technical decision, every improvement introduced, every race in which expectations aren't met, is part of a larger verdict. And that verdict won't just be measured in trophies. It will be measured in credibility. It's clear that the work isn't done. That the initial conceptual errors have required urgent solutions. But it's also clear that in Formula One, there's no room for half measures. You're either at the top or you're falling behind. Ferrari is fighting against more than its rivals. It's fighting against its own history, against the pressure of its fans, against the weight of years of frustration. And this time, there's no room for another failure.